many districts don't quite realize that energy costs, utility costs, are the second highest expense in their budgets, just behind personnel. And usually 30% of what a district is spending on energy is attributed to inefficient use.
Welcome back to another episode of The Path Forward. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Rick Fernandez, and we're here talking innovation and education. I got a special guest, friend of the show, Kendra McQuilton, CEO of Energia. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, Rick. Thanks so much for having me back. I'm doing great.
Well, Howard, first of all, let's just talk about the weather. In Texas, it's been 127, but just curious about the New York weather. Is it a little bit better up there for you guys?
It's better this week, but the last week to 2 weeks, we've had some terrible rain. We had a state of emergency where some dams were flooded out, so and Connecticut as well. So everyone's okay here in my circles, but you would never know it this week. We're having a great week so far.
Well, that's good news. I mean, so far this summer, we've had a hurricane, a couple of huge tornadoes here in the Houston area that just knocked out all kind of power in schools. And so it kind of seems that energy and power is sitting front and center here in Texas. So just for those, especially my Texas folks, right, because we're really struggling with our K-12 budgets. I don't think that's a secret. And I really want my Texas folks to listen in. What is Energia and what is it that y'all do?
Sure. So Energia is it's an energy consulting and engineering firm. It's actually my family business. Started over 20 years ago working with my dad. Took ownership about 8 years ago. Very proud of the company. And so what we do is we specialize in helping K through 12 school districts navigate the complexities of energy efficiency projects. I think across the board, no one would say they're not interested in making their buildings more energy efficient. But as you know, there's a million different types of approaches. There's doing one-off projects. There's doing more comprehensive projects like energy performance contracts. There's also a host of grants that are available that people have heard of, but they're not really sure if they're eligible for and don't know how to go about getting those funds. And so really, I would say Energia serves as a trusted advisor and consultant for school districts that want to become as efficient as possible, but really need help getting their projects off the ground and getting a strategy in place.
Okay, so obviously for my Texas folks, finance is front and center, but what are you seeing across the country in terms of school districts and how they're trying to navigate their own financial struggles?
Sure. I think financial struggles are front and center everywhere that we are engaged with school districts. We're predominantly in the Northeast, but we are meeting with districts across the country. And things are not getting better. In fact, every year it seems to get a little bit tighter. The budgets, they're having to make cuts post-COVID funding with the ESSER monies drying up. So that's created its own host of challenges. Yet the kids still need the support that they have been getting. And then on top of that, rising operational costs. Energy costs are always going up. And so it's forced a lot of districts to turn even more to out-of-the-box strategies and, innovative strategies. You can't continue to do things necessarily the same way you've always been doing them. You have to look for cost savings opportunities. You have to look for ways to leverage different funding sources. And so we're seeing that across the country.
Would you agree that it would behoove K-12 leadership to not only think about what currently we have available in our needs, but also how do we drive revenue for the future? Even though we're obviously public school districts, we're not for profit, but any little bit helps with maintaining programs, with maintaining staffing. Do you see the need for, all right, how do we drive revenue? How do we come up with big, huge savings? Is that kind of what your belief is that school districts should be thinking about?
Absolutely. I mean, we're fortunate in that we get to work in a business that creates a lot of opportunity and value for school districts that really have exhausted many, if not all, of their other options for funding. Many districts don't quite realize that energy costs, utility costs, are the second highest expense in their budgets, just behind personnel.
Right.
So that's, and usually 30% of what a district is spending on energy is attributed to inefficient use. Not not their fault. It's not a condemnation whatsoever of school districts. It's just the reality of we have aging buildings in our country. And when they were designed, they weren't designed with today's energy efficiency technology. It didn't exist back then. And so there's lots of opportunities, though, which is the positive side of that, to really become a more efficient operation. In fact, recently we've been doing a lot of, for example, uh, solar carports. So in other words, you've got parking lots that's unused. Well, it's not unused, but it's just space.
Right.
It's a cost center. And what we've done a lot on Long Island, New York, and other places is we have monetized parking lots by erecting carports that have solar on the roof. So it covers up the cars, it keeps them cooler, it protects people from the elements, as well as generates savings for the school district that they can allocate elsewhere.
I love that. I never even thought about that. But yeah, only if they had like these big ventilation fans with blowing ice in Texas would that be the perfect solution to 107-degree weather. Um, if a district is, they don't know, right, and they're hearing a little bit about it, what would you advise a first step to be? Like, how, explain how you approach a new partner or a new client or somebody that's just, hey, I have no idea what this is, but can you just give me a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, the first step is listening to what their goals and what their needs are. Some school districts, for example, they know they want a certain technology. They know they just want LED lighting, for example. But then others are looking for a more comprehensive approach. Some of them, a few that we're working with right now in Texas, have engaged us to create energy master plans for them.
Okay, explain.
So
Can you explain what that is? What's their thinking process on developing a master plan?
sure. Well, it's kind of like what you asked in the question. It's that they know they need to become more efficient. They just know their bills are, out of control, and they have old systems, but they don't know how to start. And they want to, rather than do something here and something there and hope it gets better, they want a more cohesive strategy. Okay, what are all of the equipment pieces in the district that really could have a positive return on investment if we were to upgrade them? Lighting, boilers, HVAC systems are huge now, again, post COVID, better ventilation systems. And so they really want to see the full menu of what could make them the most efficient district that they can be, and also what's feasible for their particular district. Solar is not necessarily a great investment everywhere, depending on your utility rates. So there's a lot of different aspects and technical aspects to putting together an energy plan that need to be examined and determined. Okay, is this the priority, or is this the priority? Or here's a multi-phased approach on how we're going to tackle this over the next 5 years or 10 years. So we come in, we do auditing, but it's not just a laundry list of, okay, you should replace these things. It's more learning about what are they interested in exploring? What are the numbers behind upgrading these particular systems? And what's the return on investment? Realistically, how much can the district expect to save by doing different packages of upgrades. And so we really just guide them through the whole process, and we make it easy for them to understand what is typically a complex uh, undertaking that no one in school districts really has specific training on energy systems and their payback periods. They may know about energy, they may be very familiar with the bond process, but they are not used to getting into the nitty gritty of energy savings. And so we help make all of that very easy for them and the community to understand.
Well, you hit the nail on the head because I'm thinking an in-depth audit, is that just like checking to make sure people turn their lights off after they leave? That's why in my mind I was like, all right, I'm not air conditioning the whole neighborhood here, people. So like your parents tell you. I know it's a lot more involved. So it seems to me, what's the hesitation? Like, what is it? Just districts being unfamiliar? What's the pushback that you may get from a school district that's a little hesitant?
I think a lot of times it's just sort of a concept that they don't feel like they have all full command of. And even though that's where we come in, sometimes it gets in the way of a district pulling the trigger on, you know, um, going into, say, a energy performance contract, which we guide them through. We're not the contractor, we're their engineers and consultants, but they're just not sure. And so, that hesitation, leads sometimes to not doing anything. And so I think really my message would be, you don't have to jump in the deep end. If you know that there are items that you need to address in your facilities. Many upgrades are energy related systems. If you're talking about core infrastructure, even windows and roofs have an energy insulative value. And so just bring in a company that isn't trying to sell you. And my recommendation would be, there's a lot of companies that try to sell a certain product or a certain way of doing things. And I think a lot of districts we have found are much more comfortable just having a company come in and just help them understand what their options are. And that can be done for any district.
In terms of misconceptions, what are districts getting wrong with their energy, or the way that they do business with maybe their local provider, that they may be missing some big time savings?
I think that, and I know I'm a little biased, but I really do believe that energy is a topic that is often sort of pushed off to a department level, or it's not really looked at as something that can be a comprehensive transformational strategy for a school district. And again, the costs in the budget are so high and they're only going to get higher. And so I really do believe that our most successful projects are the ones where the board of ed, the superintendent, the CFO, the COO all are together and they're all on the same page in terms of the level of priority that energy efficiency requires. And also the sponsorship by those folks at the highest levels of leadership. For example, School District of Philadelphia, the board, the superintendent, the COO, the CFO are very, very involved with our work there because they are all um, of the same mindset that it's important not only from a cost perspective, but for the kids to have those comfortable learning environments. And so, what I would just say is that if there are superintendents or CFOs or COOs listening, uh, if you put the right management team in place and make sure that if this is a value of your school district to be cost effective and to create comfortable learning environments, take it on. There are companies like us that can do the heavy lifting for you, but without that sponsorship, without that leadership at the higher levels of a school district, um, a lot of times the projects just end up being one-offs, or they just don't reach the level of impact that the projects that we work on with districts that are really leading from the top do.
Can you speak to the engagement process a little bit, right? So when do you come in? What might the cost look like? When would a district have to pay for like those are all the questions that we typically get anytime there's something new. Is like, all right, well, what does this look like for us in terms of dollars and cents?
Sure. So it can really vary, and it just depends on what the district needs. The first thing we'll come in is just listen to, okay, what's on your mind? You know, we're here. You're taking your time to meet with us. What's going on with energy here? A lot of times, what we'll do is a free assessment just to see, just to do some basic benchmarking to give them sort of like a report card on their buildings from an energy efficiency point of view. That is good information for anyone to have, just so they have a sense of, are we off the charts? Are we doing okay? Which buildings really need the most work, etc. And we'll do that at no charge because it really is something that helps us also determine what path they should take. And then from there, there's different ways of going about moving ahead. We do have a lot of experience shepherding energy performance contracts for school administrators. So again, we're not the contractor that's guaranteeing the savings, but we are their expert and the liaison in between the administration and the ESCO energy services companies. And these are turnkey projects. They're very comprehensive, and they typically will pay for themselves at a guaranteed energy savings that the upgrades themselves will yield over time. But that's not for everybody. There's also districts that we work with, like the School District of Philadelphia. You know, they're interested in using capital dollars that they have to implement things like air conditioning, which we've been talking about as being just a critical thing right now. So we're helping them with that. And then there are some, again, that are just master plans at this point, and they're priced based on really the level of effort for the size of the district.
Sure. When you look at an overall spend of a district, what are going to be your top three things if you just had to guess? Any district USA, were they wasting the most money, or were they the least efficient? I should say.
I think the least efficient aspects of school districts are, you know, certainly if they haven't retrofitted their lighting to LED at this point, there's a 50% savings in your electricity bill right off the bat for upgrades like that. And really, the return on investment is just through the roof on that. So I would say if you haven't done that, you know, that's one thing. And then I think, you know, also just, and I get it, you know, districts, they have HVAC that, or building controls that in some cases don't even have any building controls. We met with a district recently that they just don't have any temperature controls. And I think that that's something that we see a lot because, you know, over time, things are overridden. These systems, a lot of them are antiquated. So they're not really setting the temperatures for the occupancy times and shutting off, you know, when people are out of the buildings. So the technology has just exploded, I would say, even in the last 10 years when it comes to how to getting these districts really tight in terms of energy usage when people are in the buildings, and then, you know, getting it low and tight when they're not there. And I think if districts are to focus on those two things, the automation of both the lighting and the temperature controls, they'll be in much, much better shape.
So, in terms of wins for your clients, can you pick out a couple of districts, and you don't have to name them if you don't want to do that, but just some of the wins that you're seeing across the country of your clients?
Sure. It's an exciting time for our clients. And I would say the biggest win to date was being selected by the School District of Philadelphia. I'll name them. They're a great partner for Energia. We've been working with them for about 8 years, and they've entrusted us with the oversight of all their Guaranteed Energy Savings Act projects. And they've done hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work through the projects that we're overseeing for them. and it's been very, very successful. And I'm very proud of that because when we met them, they were facing $4 billion in needed repairs and new construction. And over time, because again of the commitment from the top levels of leadership, we've been able to really make a dent in that. And then, that relationship really showed us and allowed us to apply our expertise on a much larger level than, say, the suburban school district, which we still love, but it was an exciting opportunity to meet with and work with a large urban school district. Um, Last time I checked, they were the eighth largest in the country. And so we're excited about all the impact we've been able to make for their students. And recently, I'll say that something very, very exciting happened. We partnered with Little Rock, Arkansas School District, and we helped them pursue the Renew America's grant program. And long story short, they won it. They were one district out of only 16% of applicants that were awarded a prize through that. They've gotten $300,000 in order to develop a master plan and kickstart their energy efficiency future programs. And then from there, it's about $11 million worth of funding that's going to come into the district to make it more efficient. And that's through the Department of Energy. And so that's another perfect example of how it's very hard for school district administrators with everything going on to not only become aware of opportunities like this grant, but then go through the steps of applying for it, which are often, sometimes tedious. You have to submit energy data. And so those are the kinds of opportunities where we really get to shine and really bring home runs for a school
Yeah,
district.
that's a lot of money. That's a lot of savings, a lot of opportunity for students ultimately.
Definitely.
Wow, that's huge. I'm sure the folks in Little Rock are really excited to have that opportunity to be working with you guys.
And their team was wonderful, and we were just on the news last week. I'll send you the link if you want to put it in there. But
Absolutely.
it was a big check at the board meeting and a news segment that night, and it was just such a great feeling.
That's awesome. I mean, that's what it's all about. Trying to get some wins where people may not think to look sometimes, right? Especially in this age of shrinking dollars and increasing cost. So, last question about the business side of things. How quickly could you, like, if I referred you to a buddy and said, "Hey, he really needs some help, but would want to look at the audit or assessment," what's the turnaround time for that roughly? And obviously, I know it would depend on the size of the district, but just in general, 15 buildings, 20 buildings, is there kind of a range in terms of turnaround time?
Sure. I'll say first that we're not a big public company, so sometimes you can get advantages with private companies that are a little bit more nimble, like we are proud to be. But typically a few weeks. Energy data can be exchanged virtually, and that's a big component because we want to look at the energy data and do the benchmarking to see where we really need to hone in and which systems are really, or buildings rather, are really going to need the most help. And then from there, a few weeks, assuming we can get access to the buildings, we can go around and turn a report around fairly quickly. But we also can adjust that based on the district's need. If they need something faster than that, we're able to accommodate that as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, depending upon this legislative session coming up in January, I guess we'll see how the wind blows in terms of finances. But I would argue that there's a lot of my friends here in Texas that could use services and use your help with trying to figure out how do we become more efficient and stick some money back into our fund balance to give to kids, really, staff, kids, all of the things that we're truly invested in. So that would be a huge opportunity for some of my folks in Texas.
Yes, and we always say every dollar spent on energy is one less dollar that goes to the classroom. And really, our main focus and mission and goal is to help districts realize savings that, and a lot of times they didn't realize were even possible, and redirect that funding back into the classroom toward educational opportunities. I mean, really, that's the ultimate goal of any of this work that we're doing.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. You got time for a quick just Q&A?
Sure.
You're looking at me like, what are you going to ask me?
I
What?
think so.
Okay. In your household, when you were growing up, right? So who was the biggest offender of leaving the lights on, leaving the door open, like leaving the bathroom water running? Who's the offense? Who's just destroying all of the efficiency in the house? That,
You're going to get me in trouble, Rick.
oh, it's you?
Well, my sister and I have to admit, we're not always the most diligent, even though my dad was like, turn the lights off, shut the lights off. He always drilled that into us, so I didn't think we were the worst, but, teenagers.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I have one in my home that I'm like, I wish she would turn the lights off.
And
You
I
don't
have
need.
two also, and it's the same thing. Yeah.
Do you ever get on to them? It's like, do you guys realize what I do for a living? Do you understand? And you're just like, I mean, hey, we'll just air condition the neighborhood. Tell everybody to come over and just gather around our front door. So y'all leave it open.
I've tried, but what mom does is boring. They really can't relate to it, so it didn't really stick.
Just start unplugging all their stuff. It's like just like, no, you can't. No, no more, no more. We're gonna.
Take the light bulbs out. I got to take the light bulbs out.
It's just nuts. What is the oldest piece of equipment that you have come across in a school building? Like, is there anything that you're like, oh my gosh, I think maybe Nikola Tesla invented this? It's so old. Like, is there anything that you've seen that just blows your mind? Because I always have come across things like, man, that's way too old.
Yes, and I wish I could articulate what our VP of engineering just found, because it was a something about a switch. I'm not even going to try, but he was he's seen it all, and he was completely blown away by this system. But I will say, being in the Northeast, uh, we've got boilers, and some of these boilers are original to the buildings, and they're dinosaurs. They're 100 years old. Some of them, hey, some of them have been hanging on. I don't know how, but I guess they don't make them like they used to. But it's always kind of fun and interesting to kind of see, what's still there, what might still work, and
I,
with the pictures.
I was in Illinois. I won't say which city, but it's probably Chicago. And they a school district there turned on. I guess it was their AC or something, and then you heard this big pop, and then you saw smoke, like black smoke coming out on the side of where one of the units was housed. And the folks, the chief operations was like, he's like, this is normal. I go, normal. So we walked around, and it looks like a fire because the smoke's so dark. And he goes, no, this is just how she warms up. And I go, this may be a problem. He goes, no, it's a hybrid. It burns oil and gas. And I said, oh Lord. And he said,
The
yeah, we need it.
optics, though.
Yeah. Well, he said we turn it on real early, like at 5 in the morning. So by the time the smoke is dissipated, I said, hey man, I understand. You trying to make do with what you got. So there are definitely some stories are like that where buildings are just old. They need some support and some replacement.
Definitely. You'll have to give me their number when we get off this podcast.
You don't just if you fly over into Midway, you'll see the plume of smoke just like coming up. I promise.
I'll check it out next time.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate you joining this show, and I obviously did this for a reason because all of my K-12 folks are hurting their resources, and it's starting to trickle down to staff and kids, and the ability to really impact student outcomes. And so when I find folks that I trust, I believe in, I know that do good work for school districts, I want to bring attention to that because we're looking for options. We're looking to be creative, and I'm sure that there are other states other than Texas that are in the same boat. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and I promise I'm going to continue to point people in your direction should they be looking for just creative ways of being more efficient and saving some money.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words, Rick, and really thank you for what you're doing. When it came across your podcast, I was like, yes, this is what people need to be talking about, just all kinds of ways to do things differently because it's a different time than it's ever been. And I think school districts really benefit from working together and hearing each other's stories. So thank you. And, you know, keep fighting the good fight. And we appreciate your support.
No,
Certainly.
absolutely, absolutely. And is there, before we go, where can they reach you? How do they get in contact? If somebody wants information, what's the best place to do that?
Sure. So our website is www.energiasaves, one word, energiasaves.com. Also, my email address is kmcquilton@energiasaves.com, and I can certainly uh, help you get to the right person depending on what you're interested in. We do offer those surveys for districts that are just really not knowing really where they stand on energy, and really that's the first step is to kind of get a gauge of where do you stand, and then from there you can develop your plan.
Awesome. Well, I want to invite all of our listeners and our viewers to, if you like the content, please hit the like button, subscribe. And if you have any questions or you need to get a hold of Kendra or anybody from Energia and you forget or you couldn't find it, feel free to DM me and I'll make sure that I put you in contact. So thank you for joining the Path Forward and see you next time.